Hello guys, welcome to the show. Glad to have you guys here. Listen, this afternoon, I wasn't feeling so good when it's time to do my show. A little bit nauseous to the stomach, wasn't feeling so good, a little bit upset. Anyway, I went to bed and slept it off. And anyway, I'm back right now and I want to talk about what's going on in the world. The world they're starting to slow down. Italy's already feeling it. They've went into a recession. Mario Draghi, he said now, just in the last few days, he said, we could go back to quantitative easing. He said, not this year, he said, but we could go back to quantitative easing if needed. The thing about quantitative easing is, once you start, you can't stop. The Fed seems like they don't realize that. They're deep into this now, this basically a global Ponzi scheme in the fiat monetary system. If you stop and you start to withdraw the liquidity from the system, the way this system is structured right from the very foundation, going back to 1914 when they first structured the central banking systems, the United States central banking system being the core central banking system, the way they structured the monetary system is that they create the money and it's basically out on loan. But that money accrues debt every year attached to the money. What they don't create is the money needed to pay the debt. So the debt is always larger than the outstanding amount of capital or money in the system or liquidity in the system. And if they try to pay it back, it goes negative. It actually goes negative if they try to pay it all back. You can't pay it back. If you try to pay it back, you're actually destroying the money out there. And then when you destroy the money, what happens is you don't have enough money to go around for everyone. And that's called deflation. That's when the value of the money goes up because there's not enough to go around because you're trying to pay off the debts. And this is essentially what the United States Central Bank is doing right now at this moment. They're taking $50 billion of money and each month they're paying back $50 billion, but they're removing it from the system. So the liquidity is drying up. And what's happening is the bonds in the United States are the most attractive bonds to buy. I mean, take a look at this. Italian bonds are almost as you earn almost as little bit of yield as the United States bonds. Which would you rather have, U.S. Treasury bonds or Italian bonds? Italian debt. I mean, let's get real. The Italians, oh my gosh, the situation in Italy, 1.7 trillion with a T, not billion, 1.7 trillion dollar, actually not dollars, euros, 1.7 trillion euros. And Italy is on a spiral to hell. And they're carrying that $1.7 trillion with them. It's going to create an enormous gaping hole. And this is why Mario Draghi said, well, quantitative easing if needed. But not this year. I don't believe that for a second, not this year. If trouble comes, he's gonna go back to quantitative easing again. They're using the quantitative easing money to buy Italian debt. But that's only getting them in deeper. I think it was January alone, I think with quantitative easing money, they bought $3 billion worth of Italian debt. So they're keeping the Italians going by buying Italian debt. But that puts them in deeper. Because if Italy goes down, then they got a giant gaping hole in their financial system that they can't quench or cannot satisfy. Then we got Brexit. Brexit has got a noose right now, and they're trying to slip out of the noose. They're trying to find anything that they can find. Theresa May's left right now, and she's went over and she's trying to renegotiate with the EU. The EU, I'm not so sure they're going to renegotiate with her because, and if to try to get an extension on Article 50, what they're going to need to do is they're going to need all 27 member states of the European Union to sign off on it, just to get an extension. I'm not so sure they're going to be able to slip out of this one, but they're trying. Government officials, sometimes they can find a way to slither out, and get away. And this getting away might be in the form of an extension to Article 50 so that they buy a few more months. Or it could be some sort of a renegotiation with Brussels. We're just going to have to wait and see. But the other alternative to that is the hard Brexit on the 29th of March. Okay? So that's the situation we got going on there. Now, oil's out there right now, and it's had a price surge over the last few months. But this looks like a temporary measure. Now, we have this whole worldwide slowdown going on right now in the entire world. Italy's felt it first. They've declared a recession. The whole world is actually in a recession right now, but they haven't really declared it yet. It hasn't become official. When you get a recession like this, what actually happens is you're going to find that commodity prices tend to drop and deflation tends to be the norm. And that's what we're kind of heading toward. We're kind of heading toward this deflation. When this deflation gets bad enough, like I said, the foundations of the financial system are the fact that the money is debt. So if you start to extinguish the debt, you extinguish the money. This creates deflation. If you realize that, then you realize this deflationary period we're going into is a self-perpetuating cycle. What that means is the slower things get, the slower things tend to get, and the more it tends to push these fiat currencies up in value. When that cycle begins, the world's central banks cannot let that process continue, because what it'll do is it'll create a situation like we had in 2008 that needs to be responded to very quickly. It's almost like if you get gangrene in your body, you've got to get into the hospital and get something done. And this is the way with the world's financial system. If you get a deflationary event like 2008, you got to get in and get something done fast. And the central banks realize this, and they have the tool to stop this. They have the tools in their ability to stop this. But this time, the problem is it's going to take a larger amount of everything that the central banks can do. Because this event's going to be worldwide, and it's going to be very, very powerful event, because we've been going through a credit cycle, and we're coming to the end of the credit cycle. Nobody can borrow any more money. And we were in a totally different situation back in 2008. Things were much better. We had much more tools to fight this with. They were able to lower interest rates. Now they haven't barely got off the floor with interest rates. There's not that much room to play with anymore. So we got a totally different situation in 2008 now, at this point, at this stage in the game. And they got much more limited tools to fight it with, but they still have quantitative easing. And believe me, Mario Draghi gave it away today. He said, hey, you know what? If we get problems here in Europe, we're going to go to quantitative easing again. They said not just yet, because he doesn't want to shock the markets. But yes, he will do it right away if the problems come fast and furious. And believe me, Europe is a hotbed, probably the worst place on earth right now for the whole thing to come apart at the seams. And you got Italy, you got Portugal, Spain, you got all these countries that are basically built on debt. They've built mountains of debt. It's the way the European Union is structured to begin with, and the way the currency is built on. Germany being the backbone, they have the best credit. They've extended that credit to these other countries within the European Union, and they went basically on a credit binge for years, with Germany being the backbone of the credit. It's almost like a father, if he's got a good credit card and a good credit rating, and they give him a bunch of cards for his family, one for his wife, one for his kids, and he goes and says, here's your card to all his wife and kids. Everything's fine and dandy. They go to the store, the wife goes to the store, and the kids go out and they have splurge, and everybody's out there having a party, all spending the money based on the father's credit. First thing you know, the bill starts coming in. And the father says, okay, we gotta cut back. We gotta go to an austerity. And this is basically what they did to the European Union. They said, okay, we got to have austerity. Well, after a while, the people got tired of this austerity. And that's where we're at right now. The people are very discontented. They don't like austerity, which basically means having to cut back, cuts and cuts, you know. They don't like this. It's cutting deep. And so the people are in a state now where the whole thing is just like reaching the end of a credit cycle. This is what we're at. We're at the end of a credit cycle, a massive credit cycle. And when you've got all of these credit bubbles everywhere, and when the whole thing starts to pop, and we start to go into a worldwide recession, what's going to happen to oil prices? I think that oil prices very well could go into decline again. We could actually see it break below the $29 barrier that it was before. Because also when you go into a decline like this, less oil is needed. And you've got places like the Permian oil basin just pumping out steady right now. Iran just declared today that they've got 160 billion barrels of crude that's ready to be pumped out of the ground. That's a lot. That's as much as Saudi Arabia right there. One country, Iran. You've got the Venezuelan government right now. You say, well, what's going on in Venezuela? Venezuela is going through turmoil with Maduro. At some point in the future, this turmoil is going to end, and they're going to start pumping oil again. You know, the only reason they're not pumping oil good right now is Maduro. They'll get this thing solved in the end. It's been going on for a long time now, and that's the way with political situations. They'll go on for quite a long time before finally, boom, 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 they get solved. You get Venezuelan oil problems solved, and they start pumping out. The Canadians, they've cut back by 300,000 barrels a day. This has helped to raise oil prices from their tar sands. But the thing about it you have to understand is the Canadians do need a little bit more money for their tar sands because it requires more processing. So we got all this going on. It's all leading me to a conclusion that the world is starting to undergo a slowdown right now. Right now. And the biggest primary reason for this slowdown is the Fed withdrawing $50 billion a month of liquidity from the system. And they're not stopping. They said, okay, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. We're going to be patient. They use one word, patience. And the markets have popped upwards, skywards. For weeks now. They've been going up and up. They're almost getting up to their old highs. All in one word, patience. But it's meaningless. It's meaningless without actions. They really haven't done anything. It's incredible the power that the Fed has just with one word. And the market's trying to interpret that word. The markets want success. They want to believe. They want to feel good. And they're buying in. They're buying in wholeheartedly to something that isn't real. When it's found out that that's not real, you can really watch the markets roll over, and that fear could really come in this time. So we got some situations brewing in the world that I wanted to talk about tonight. Thank you guys for listening. And I'll be back to my home studio pretty soon. You know, be broadcasting from there. And also my channel, Financial Turmoil Explained, you know, I'm going to be working hard on that channel, but also at the same time, I got a channel that I'm going to be renaming, and I'm going to be, this summer, I'm going to be doing a little road trip shows, and I'm going to be working on that channel, trying to build something there, something very interesting, because let's face it, I look at YouTube, you know, and I look at all these videos out there on YouTube right now that they have, and everybody's out there and they're trying to do practical jokes. They're practical joking it to death, you know, and I mean, it gets boring in the end. Kind of like the same thing, you know, with your films and movies out there. It's all action, 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 action. After a while, how many cars can you see crash into a wall and burn, and guys jumping through the air and rolling on the ground, you know, and shooting at each other, all this kind of stuff, before you get bored, you know? And YouTube just keeps running the same stuff over and over. They got nothing new. They don't have any shows that are actually interesting that you can actually get into. I'm going to plan on producing a show this summer that's going to be actually interesting and have interesting people in it and interesting situations involved. There's nothing more interesting than human interaction, you know, more so than special effects or your practical jokes or all this kind of stuff. You know, you get tired of all that stuff in the end. You know, pratfalls, people falling off of things, you know, and banging their head and stuff like that. You get disinterested in all that. Anyway, thank you guys for listening. Like and subscribe, and hey, I'll let you know when I get home. I'm going to get started on my project on this new channel. But I'm going to be working really hard at the same time on my two channels, the Delta channel, Delta Report, and which is mostly cryptocurrency on Delta Report, you know. But on this channel, I get right into the financials, you know. So thank you guys for listening. Like and subscribe, and we'll catch you in the next show. Bye-bye, guys.